Good afternoon, everybody. We're just going to give a few minutes for people to join. In the meantime, if you could add your name, your organization and country into the chat, that would be great, so we can see where we've got people joining us from. People are coming into the room now. We'll start in about 2 minutes, and then people can join as we go along. So thank you. Thank you for joining in the meantime and entering your details. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Steve Collins. I'm the SADC TFCA Network Coordinator. And welcome you to our last webinar for the year. The SADC TFCA Network is a voluntary group made up of people that are working within transfrontier conservation areas. People that would include donor organizations, SADC Secretariat members, members of member states who are either within environmental affairs departments or other departments, rural development, for example. We have members of non-governmental organizations that are part of the network who are working in TFCAs, academics, etc. If you aren't a member of our TFCA network, I would urge you to go to our website, which is tfcaportal.org. We'll put that in the chat, and please do sign up. This is our last webinar for the year, and what we have chosen to focus on is the plan around within SADC to develop and focus on developing economic development corridors. As Africa develops, we know there is a need to coordinate development, to make sure it integrates, helps the region integrate, and that doesn't impact negatively on the development of Africa. We know we are unfortunately still living in a post-colonial world where many of the borders are obstacles more than enabling development. So our program for today, I'm going to show you now, is we're going to have 3 presentations, and we'll take questions and comments afterwards. If you think of questions in the meantime, please add them into the chat. Rawley Sherwin from GIZ will be monitoring the chat and will let me know when we get to the discussion points what the questions are. So our webinar program, and we will definitely end by 4 o'clock, is the following. Ms. Chikondi Nsusa from the SADC Transport Unit will lay out for us what are these economic development corridors that we've been hearing about. Where are they and what do they aim to achieve? Dr. Dumasani Mzebele from the SADC unit within SADC is going to talk then about the issue of how water is an enabler and is needed for these economic development units, and potentially could be negatively impacted on the issue of water. So he's going to talk about that. And then lastly, before we get into the questions, Mr. Colm Zuau, who is the SADC TFCA advisor within the Directorate of Food, Agricultural and Natural Resources, is going to try and bring some of the issues that have been mentioned and really focus on us as a community of practice around TFCAs. What potentially do these economic development corridors mean for us? What should we be thinking about? Thank you once again all for joining. And let me move forward then and begin by, first of all, reminding us what are these transfrontier conservation areas that we've set up. These transfrontier conservation areas are instances where country to country they reach an agreement about managing landscapes across borders to support conservation as well as improve the lives of people living within those landscapes. We currently have 14 transfrontier conservation areas covering just over 1 million hectares. And that's, in fact, that's incorrect. It's 1 million square kilometers, not hectares. We're much bigger than the million hectares, I'm happy to say. So that's something that we must correct. And recently, the one which was signed this year between Angola and Zambia, the Luwa Plains, Musuma, really took us over 1 million square kilometers. This issue, as you would have seen in the way we pitched and advertised this webinar, we talked about the E-WEF Nexus, ecosystems, water, energy, food. I'm sure for many of you, this is not the first time you've heard about the WEF Nexus, water, energy, food. I think it came into development discussion probably about 10, 15 years ago about what is the interrelationship between our water systems, between the energy we produce, the energy we use, as well as our food systems. As we know, agriculture is one of the biggest users of food. It's also one of the biggest users of energy. But once again, water produces energy, certainly in Southern Africa, our hydropower schemes, and within Africa, it's really been, it's a choice in terms of renewable energy. We've been developing these energy systems. When we talk about ecosystems, it was, I recall a few years ago, people started talking about welfare and they put ecosystems on the end, almost as an afterthought. And I think slowly but surely we've been correcting that by saying, actually, ecosystems are the basis of everything. If ecosystems don't withhold water, release it slowly into the system, then our river systems are in trouble. And then our hydropower is in trouble. But if we have healthy ecosystems, and we even talk about nature-based solutions in terms of infrastructure development, it's really about recognition that with healthy ecosystems, they enable us to grow our food, to produce energy, and to give us water for that. So just bear that in mind as we go forward in the discussion. And obviously from a transfrontier conservation area perspective, ecosystems are what we think about on a daily basis. And the work we do is trying to conserve, restore, enable people to live within those ecosystems in a sustainable way. For those of you who've been living on another planet, you might not know, but we just concluded the G20 meeting in South Africa. There was a lot of discussion about the non-participation of the United States of America. However, for us, we see it as a positive, and the declaration is certainly positive in terms of our work. I just wanted to highlight 4 issues which are in the declaration, which talk to the subject we are about to get into. The first of all was the commitment to set up what's called the Ubuntu Legacy Initiative, and it was launched to accelerate cross-border infrastructure projects in Africa, which could serve as a model for other regions. And certainly what we're talking about is enabling cross-border trade and infrastructure development through these economic development corridors. The G20 Africa Cooperation Agenda, which really talks to the African Free Continental Trade Agreement and talks about, let's implement this, let's mobilize investments in productive sectors and facilitate key infrastructure projects aligned with the African Union Agenda 2063. It also talks about local capacity building, which really talking about encouraging investments in food production, storage, and distribution to reduce reliance on global supply chains. Once again, thinking about the E-WEF Nexus, water, energy, food, this is what that's talking to. And lastly, cross-border development, and this is really what SADC's regional integration plans are, and the policies are trying to create and support credible project pipelines, enabling environments, blended finance, and regional infrastructure for sustainable growth in Africa. You know, we are behind the rest of the world in terms of economic development, but we have the resources, we have the assets. We just got to find ways that we now across Africa really promote development in a sustainable way. And there's even this last week, the COP on climate just finished, and they, for example, are talking about committing another 2/3 more funding towards climate adaptation. So with that background and something to think about, I would like us to move to our first speaker. I'm sorry, I made the mistake. I called Dr. Chikondi a doctor. She told me she isn't a doctor. Sorry, Ms. Nsuza. But we'll go straight on to you. You could please put your camera on and talk to us from a SADC perspective. What are the strategic economic corridors that we're hearing about and we'd like to know more about? Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Steve, and welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. As indicated, I'm the Senior Program Officer for Transport in the SADC Secretariat, and I'm going to talk about the economic corridors. You can go to the next slide. For quite some time within SADC and even beyond, we have been talking about transport and transit corridors. But we are now trying to divert from that to move towards development of these as economic corridors, where we are looking at the infrastructure, not just in transport, but also integrating that with other infrastructure in water, energy, ICT, and others as well. And there is a background to all this, where there's been a lot of talk about corridors from the SADC Treaty, the Protocol for Transport, Communication, and Meteorology, the SADC Corridor Strategy, Vision 2050, the RISD, the RIDIM. They are all talking about corridors as development planning and programming tools. But yet, this is not fully leveraged. We are still talking about trade and transport corridors as transit for people, goods, and services. As we're moving towards economic corridors, we are looking at adding value to the spatial economies, looking at industrialization, agriculture, agro-processing, forestry, manufacturing, and all other activities that can contribute to the economic growth of our region. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we note that corridors evolve from transport to logistics to trade, and then economic and growth corridors. As I mentioned, most of our corridors are still at stage 3, but we want now, we are advocating and driving this towards becoming economic corridors. Next slide, please. In SADC, we have 18 corridors, and 9 of those are considered to be critical and strategic. These are the North-South Corridor, the Central, the Dar es Salaam, Nakala, Beira, Maputo, Transkarahari, the Walvis Bay, Ndola, Lubumbashi, and Lobito corridors. Out of these, 3 stand out because they cut across, and these are the North-South Corridor, the Beira Corridor, and the Lobito Corridor. The 2 corridors of Beira and Lobito, which span from Mozambique to Angola, they form the Trans-African Highway 9. Next slide, please. So as SADC, we are advocating the development of the North-South Corridor as a pilot for an economic corridor. And this is because it has strategic importance. We consider the North-South Corridor to be the backbone of SADC. We have 8 corridors that are connected through the North-South Corridor, and it also serves 8 member states. And we also note that 50% of the SADC population lies on the North-South Corridor, and 60% of trade by volume is carried on the same corridor. And eventually, the activities on this corridor benefit all the SADC member states. The fact that it's also anchored on the port of Durban makes it more attractive to the island states, as it can link up to them through a maritime corridor. As mentioned, I think there are also overlays with Trans-African Highway. We have mainly 3 highways that are transected: the Cape Town to Tripoli, Cape Town to Cairo, and the Beira to Lobito. Beyond all this, we also note that the North-South Corridor services the Copper Belt and several key mineral deposit locations. We have also agricultural production zones. Next slide, please. And also major centers of manufacturing from Gauteng to DRC and Zambia. We have the river basins, the Kaza area spanning from Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The corridor is also serviced by the Southern Africa Power Pool. And we also note that the backbone of ICT infrastructure networks are on this corridor. And also several capital cities and metropolitan and industrial capitals. From this figure, you can see that on the left is the African continent showing the Trans-African highways. The 2 that are starting from the bottom are the Cape Town to Cairo and Cape Town to Tripoli. Across somewhere towards the middle lower, we have the Lobito to Beira corridor. On the right, we see the distribution of the corridors along the SADC region. Next slide, please. So here we can see how the North-South Corridor is lying in the SADC region from the port of Durban at the bottom. And on the upper left, that's the DRC. And on the upper right, goes all the way to Malawi and spanning through several member states. The one in blue is the roads, while the one in the lines in red for rail. Yeah, we can go through the next slide. This was just trying to show the largest cities and how the North-South corridor is transecting them. Next slide, please. I'm not going to talk much here because I know there are experts who are going to talk about this, but it was just showing how the North-South corridor is relating to the transfrontier conservation areas. And here also showing how the ICT networks and the energy sub-grid is also in relation to the North-South corridor. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. Our colleagues in trade and agriculture, they have done several studies which show how some major products flow within the region. And these maps are just showing how the main crops, wheat, cotton, and soya are flowing within the region. And as you can see, most of them are concentrated on the North-South corridor as well. Can move to the next slide. So we are working together with other players, especially agriculture, trade, and especially trade and facilitation, looking at how what initiatives are they taking and how can they be brought in to make sure that our initiatives in transport are also talking to the initiatives that are already being planned in their respective areas. This is one of the projects, maybe they will also talk about later, for agriculture, where they're looking at small reservoirs and pumps. And this is in line with the hand-in-hand with FAO, looking at agriculture, irrigation, and how communities can benefit from this. We are targeting the communities along the corridors to make sure that they are easily accessible, and whatever initiatives that they do can easily be initiated or enabled by the North-South corridor. You can go to the next slide. So there's the irrigation, there's also the promotion of service mechanization service hubs. As you can see, those are the crops, the soya, rice, wheat, and cotton that are being targeted. And if you go to the next slide, you also see that the other area, this is for the farm mechanization, just demonstrating how the locals can also benefit from that, including large farms as well. And then the agro-processing facilities that are also distributed along the North-South corridor as well. Next slide, please. So this was just showing how we can improve lives and reduce post-harvest losses by building modern facilities along the corridor, which will be complementing the efforts in agriculture and others. So these can be joint projects going hand in hand with transport, but working with other stakeholders. Another area that was explored was the value chains, and there are huge potentials in value chains as well. You can go to the next slide. A study was conducted by our colleagues in value chains where they identified several minerals that are within the region and which countries they are dominating. And most of these member states, they are also on the North-South corridor. If you can go to the next slide. The next slide shows how the study went further to look at the contribution of these minerals to the global market, but also to the Africa market. You may even see that in some cases, for some of those minerals, they are contributing 100% to the Africa market as SADC contribution to the supply market. Next slide, please. So with the potentials that we have and the existing resources, if we can leverage and look at the comparative advantages of our member states, we have South Africa that has huge potential in manufacturing, and maybe other countries as well, which can produce batteries perhaps from the same region and electric vehicles from the minerals that we are getting within the region. As a result, we can be self-sufficient and even use this to export to other countries as well within the region and beyond. We have oil extraction, the potential to have oil refineries, which can also help the region to be rich in oils and be self-sufficient. Next slide, please. Also, the potential, we have animal hides, which can come from Namibia, Zambia, Botswana, which have huge herds, and this can be processed into finished products if we can invest in the processing part of it. Next slide. So this is just demonstrating that we can have small scale and large scale, looking at all the areas that I've just elaborated, but these are just examples as we are going beyond these. And mainly it's exploring what are the potentials along the corridor, which areas, which countries are already advocating for what. All this has been done in line with studies and programs that have already been developed as elaborated on this. These are studies that will emphasize on the North-South corridor as a huge potential area for investment to open up the whole SADC region. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. So I'm sure most of you can relate to that picture. That's the Kasumbalesa, and it's just showing some of the challenges that we have in terms of management, coordination, and infrastructure bottlenecks, even skills that would help us to better manage most of the challenges that we have. In the next slide, you also see that we have security and safety issues, which also need to be addressed to make sure that this corridor is very effective and is able to produce and give what we expect of it. As I've just elaborated, all these are areas that we already have potential in, and we can leverage on that to give the North-South corridor to make it an engine for economic growth within the region. We have had studies also from DBSA 2015, which emphasize that there's a potential of creating wealth of the magnitude of $16.1 billion by GDP by 2035 in the region, and creating 574,000 jobs if we can just open up the North-South corridor. Next slide, please. So at the end of the day, we are inviting different stakeholders to work with us as we are developing establishing a corridor management institution and constituting a secretariat, which will now look at a pipeline of projects, working with member states to come up with priorities. And these priorities will later be updated in terms of having feasibility studies to make them more bankable. So that's what I can say about the North-South corridor. The next corridor is just briefly the Lobito corridor. I think there's already a lot of interest on Lobito. It spans from Ndola in Zambia through Kolwezi in DRC to Lobito in Angola. Next slide, please. For the Lobito corridor, there are already lots of studies that have been done and identified the several projects that can be developed. And the areas that are being concentrated on are the battery manufacturing, green minerals, and the agro-processing as well. And for this, next slide, please. There are immediate priorities that can be invested in, like the Angola-Zambia road, which is ready for implementation, but there are also advanced preparation for Lobito-Zambia railway and the Kolwezi-Solwezi interconnector. Meanwhile, we need to do a feasibility for some OSPPs and in interconnector and roads as well. For now, we established a secretariat for the Lobito corridor, which is coordinating and harmonizing all the potential investments on the corridor. Next slide, please. So we are estimating that if we can do these initiatives within the Lobito corridor, we can reduce the transit time by 40%. We have about $1 billion committed. And for the pipeline, we have $30 billion. Next slide, please. Yeah, so that just wraps up what we can effectively do. I would just also briefly mention that for the Beira corridor, we are facilitating the signing of an MOU with member states to establish a corridor management institute. Meanwhile, there are initiatives, bilateral initiatives that are happening between the member states and financiers. For instance, the development of the rehabilitation of the Beira port, which will also enhance our initiatives in developing the corridors to be economic corridors. So that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chikondi. That was great. It was really interesting to see, and I'm a bit ashamed to say I think we're catching up a bit late because clearly a lot of work has already been done, which is really good. And I think from our perspective, we need to start thinking about things. I'm really interested in we can talk a bit later about these institutions that you're setting up and the secretariats to maybe see potentially how we can involve the conservation and rural development sector within those as well. So thank you, Chikondi. We're now going to move on to the water part of the SADC Secretariat, and I would ask Dr. Dumasani Nzibele to unmute, and we can see you perfectly. Dumi, please, if you could maybe, what we've asked you to do is really have a look at the outcome of a discussion which took place, which really tried to look at this nexus approach, including the impact on TFCAs, but certainly what do these corridors mean for the other sectors besides transport that we've heard about?
Thank you very much, Steve. And indeed, it is an honor to be in this session and also to share perspectives and programs of the water sector in relation to supporting the corridor initiatives. So it's just to share experience that we have started now the dialogue or the conversations in the water sector in relation to what we see of ourselves as a sector supporting the corridors, economic corridor development in the SADC region, of course, with the leadership of our transport sector. We had this workshop on really the dialogue, which was seeking to explore and define the strategic role of water in enabling smart, integrated, and climate resilient regional economic corridors. Using the E-WEF, of course, moderator, it's still E-WEF. It's still E-WEF. If it's a we, it means it's biased from the water sector, as the one presenting is from the water sector. Otherwise, it is the same thing. Indeed, it was an exciting conversation. We appreciate the support of the German government in relation to convening us for this important conversation point. The German government, through the GIZ-TWM program and our partners, Global Water Partnership. So it was in Maseru. It drew so many sectors in participation. Of priority was the E-WEF sectors, drawing also tourism, water management institutions, river basin organization, a few sample of Ministry of Economic Planning, gender and youth sectors, private sector, the power pools, ICPs, and many others. We also wanted to, as part of the conversation, to now start framing an initial understanding of the corridor concept in relation to the water sector, what it will demand of us. The dialogue also explored the nuances and developments of significance in the same issue. And then the outcomes were in the form of important observations and then recommendations. The whole issue arises from water being an enabler of regional integration and industrialization. Of course, the story of poverty eradication and wealth creation, using the frameworks that my colleague Chikonde has already highlighted in the Apex guidance and strategy frameworks of SADC. Water is crucial for functional cities, border posts, and border towns, using the WASH angle, water, sanitation, and hygiene angle. Water is important. Chikonde has highlighted a lot of work around the regional value chains development. You need water to get those developed. And the functional regional economies and livelihoods, water is central. We have got enabling policies and legislative frameworks that support us in this. We move to the next slide, Steve. And then now, trying now to understand the corridor implications and demands from the water sector. I'm using just an example of the North-South corridor. So they wanted to understand the sense of the spatial extent in relation to the transport corridors. So those blue bands are just saying probably that's where our interventions will be very intensive in supporting the corridors. Move to the next one. In a conceptual framing, the black lines then are saying this would be the corridor. There'll be so many economic corridors within this band, which is defined by letter A in that diagram. So many of them, all of them are important for the regional development and economic corridor functioning. And then the big question from us is then where do we locate water in terms of requirements, in terms of impacts of those activities impacting our waters, so that there is sustainability in them. Still move back. Sorry. Yeah. Now you see the river basins are traversing the corridors, like Chikonde was highlighting several of them. So you might find that some of the development has got to happen outside the corridor, but to service the corridor interest. You can move me to the next one then. So here I'm just doing a sample. So thanks to the transport sector, they've assisted us in reimagining our developments. It was so interesting to realize that, by the way, the developments that are already happening in the water sector, some of them are contribute immediately and directly to the corridor development. If you think of the Gauteng province and economic node, which is seated on the corridor, we have got the Lesotho Highlands water transfer schemes now from Lesotho to South Africa, servicing that, providing water security in there. We're planning now the Lesotho-Botswana water transfer to service the Greater Gaborone, which is also seated on the corridor. And we are also already working on the Congo water transfer concept to service the central upstream Zambezi, which is the central SADC. So we realize indeed we need to be intensifying. We are on the right course, but we also will be needing to get guidance of the transport sector in terms of demand centers of critical importance so that we can respond to that. You can move me to the next one. So our policy and legislative frameworks that support us in doing this business, we've got the regional water protocol, which is ensuring that a shared vision on water security, regional water security, and equity issues, the right of access to all member states and all regions, and then peaceful, the resolution of water conflicts for our river basins, because if there's fighting over these waters, it gets frozen in terms of developing. It will not assist the corridor development. We have recently revised or updated our regional water policy. Interestingly, it is talking to the climate resilient, ecological and built infrastructure. You realize now that the E-WEF is coming very strong, and indeed is calling for the deliberate, intentional adoption of the Nexus approaches in the issue of water development and management, and the expansion of delivery of water services across the region, which indeed will assist in dealing with the regional development, not just a basin, one basin, and the diversification of the water mix, calling indeed intersectoral cooperation and coordination in the same. Move to the next. So now I get directly to the outcomes, the observation in terms of key messages. Indeed, the dialogue underscored the point that water is an enabler of wealth creation and development, but we were guided that this is water is only impactful as an enabler when working with other sectors, buttressing the point of Nexus and other intersectoral coordinations that are of importance. Success of corridors depend a lot on regional water and energy security. We should recognize also the role of renewables as we're talking energy, meteorological sector inputs, dealing with climate analytics and ICT in corridor development, like Chikondi was already highlighting. Cities and corridors need groundwater sensitive planning and monitoring. If you saw in my conceptual, we had an inner band. That inner band is intensity area whereby those activities can also impact the resource in terms of quality and sustainability, like pollution, whether surface or groundwater, like the groundwater dependent ecosystems, so to speak, as an example. So there's a need also for accelerated agricultural transformation using water efficient technologies. Regional value chains development requires addressing also the water need, while also dealing with food security and food systems issues. We need to address also the urban and rural divide in services provision, because tendency is you find the urbans are well supplied, but the rural, especially in the transitioning zones, when you're talking corridors, you'd find that they are underserved. And then also we need to bridge the TFCAs, RBO divide. We need, because it requires better coordination and MOUs on collaboration strengthening. Move me to the next. And then the recommended action. We have a framework in SADC, which is the E-WEF collaboration framework. It doesn't have this important E, Steve. So we need, it was emphasized that we need to have a formalization of the E-WEF, so that politically, so that it does have the political support region-wide, so that we can make meaningful contribution to the corridor development concept. Encourage RBOs to enter into agreements with TFCAs and jointly develop the E-WEF investment projects, jointly develop. Because that collaboration is important, because it truly helps in the source to see issues of governance and management of water resources. So that partnership needs to be really cemented. Improve synchronization of dam operations. This is talking about increasing water security. Maintain ecosystems in the region's water tower nations. The region's water tower nations would be those countries whereby a lot of the runoff is generated from. In the Orange sector, for instance, you'll be talking Lesotho. In the Okavango, you'll be talking Angola. In the Zambezi, you'll be talking maybe several countries, Angola, DRC, Namibia, and part of Zambia. So it's saying let us really maintain those ecosystems there. The downstream countries don't say also contribute to the sustaining of the ecosystems in the upstream countries because it's important for the entire basin. Progressive policy alignment is required so that the nexus can be indeed strengthened to support corridor development effectively. Innovative water harvesting solutions would be required, and we need to develop the necessary political will and capacity to think corridor development by the support sectors, water being this one of them. We built that culture of thinking corridor. Thanks for moving me. They need to address the research and capacity gaps, both in the transport sector and the supporting sectors. Establish corridor compacts with RPOs and TFCAs so that there's a deliberate ambition and guidance on systemic contribution and collaboration to support the corridors. Infrastructure in one sector is less attractive. So multi-sectoral approaches were emphasized, and I highlighted this last point that sometimes we'll have to be investing outside the corridor boundaries. Like, for instance, ecosystems don't follow the corridor boundaries. Move me to the next slide. In conclusion, then, the underlining is the multi-sectoral collaboration and single sector strategies. Silo approaches will not work. For resilient and sustainable economic corridors development, we require multi-sectoral collaborations and partnership. We believe the solution is around our E-WEF. The diagram on the right is summarizing the whole story, which is where Steve highlighted. With a poorly managed ecosystems, we have got water insecurity. If you have got water insecurity, you have got unsustainable hydropower generation and unsustainable food security. With all these insecurities, you end up with a non-functional economic corridor region. Moderator, colleagues, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dumisani. And I'm reminded we are in the process of saying goodbye to Domingo Shkov, who was the Director of Food, Agricultural and Natural Resources. And I think he'd be very happy to see this issue of working beyond silos, even within SADC, across the sectors, is really becoming a reality. And you highlighted the reasons why we need to work beyond those sectors. And the truth is, even at a national government level, at a member state level, they're the same silos that we need to also move out of and start a prize using the Nexus approach. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
We will now move on to our last presenter, Mr. Colm Zouau, who is the TFCA advisor on the SADC Secretariat. He was previously with Kavango Zambezi that you've heard about in some of the presentations. And he was at the multi-sector dialogue in Maseru, which gave him an opportunity to start thinking about what are the synergies and dependencies between the sectors and the importance of healthy ecosystems, where many of us work, and in trying to keep them healthy or make them healthier. Colm, thank you. Over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thanks, Steve, and good afternoon to everyone who is participating. And again, a big thank you to the colleagues from SADC Secretariat. Especially, I want to reflect on the economic trade corridors, which my colleagues have mentioned. And from where we stand in terms of conservation, we are then moved to ask, where are these corridors in TFCAs? What do they mean? If we superimpose them with our TFCAs in terms of the economy of TFCAs, and also in terms of the overall conservation goals of our TFCAs. So those are questions that I think I'm really agitated to ask the colleagues who are here in terms of the presentation from the colleagues from the Secretariat. And coming to that page, Steve, which you are highlighting there, it's actually showing the spread of TFCAs in SADC. And I must say, yes, we are covering quite a lot of space. We are covering quite a number of countries. And again, in terms of through the TFCAs, what does it mean, given that the spread is so enormous, given that the numbers of TFCAs are growing, and also given the perspectives that we have been given by colleagues from SADC in terms of economic growth, in terms of infrastructure development, and related water infrastructure development as well. So I think that provides that kind of background. And thanks, Steve. I think you also gave an outline of what TFCAs are. Actually, it's just around conservation of natural resources at scale, largely across national boundaries. And it speaks to national capital. It speaks to enabling institutions and to a greater deal, a need for concerted collaboration and cooperation. You can be next, Steve. Yes, in terms of our theory of change, I think just following from the previous slide, we are talking more around partnerships. We are talking more around resourcing activities. We are also talking around capacitation in terms of activities on the ground, in terms of governance of the TFCAs, and in terms of putting people at the center of the whole initiative. So that's the kind of TFCAs that we would want to have, which puts people at the center, which is properly governed, resourced, which speaks to the need for partnerships and capacity. You can move to the next, Steve. Yeah, so currently, this is what we perceive for TFCAs. We perceive to have economic development, as was mentioned by colleagues. Tourism is part of us. People, like I said, are central to our initiative, and natural capital in terms of wildlife, forests is also key. Different land uses we have in TFCAs, and the idea is we don't have to throw away any part of any of the land uses in favor of the other, but the question is, how do we balance around the many or the different land uses that we have? I also wanted, in terms of the issues now on the ground, I also wanted to highlight what is affecting our TFCAs now and into the future. I just tried to draw from this graph in terms of world population. Population in 2015 was at 7.3, projected to increase to 9.5 billion in 2050. For Africa, where we are, 2015, we were sitting at 1.2 billion, and it is estimated that by 2050, we will have 2.8 billion. Again, in terms of these numbers, in terms of economics of our landscapes, what does that mean? It is also estimated that globally, an estimate of 430 million hectares will be cleared for agriculture by 2050. And again, if we put this in the perspective of TFCAs, what does that mean to our corridors? What does that mean to our populations as well? In terms of the demand for agriculture, still speaking to population, the picture which is to your right there, it's actually showing. I tried to just draw around lion range changes in lion ranges, which was actually necessitated by demand for agriculture. If you look at the picture or to your right there, you can see how the lion range is dwindling. In red there is the current range. Before then, the range was the one in those slanting lines there. So really it's showing that the demand for land is increasing. And again, the question is, what does this mean to our landscapes? What does this mean to our TFCAs? Going to issues to do with climate change. And I think always we are told that an increase of 1.5 degrees Celsius, we really want to be below that. And if we go to that and above, what does it mean in terms of our landscapes, in terms of species?
I think from our side, from our side, I think what we had agreed with you was that you'd.
Oh, sorry for that. And what does this mean in terms of changes in the ecology and the vegetation communities, in terms of animals, in terms of agriculture? We can see that the future is bleak if climate change continue to persist that way. I also wanted to look into the issues to do with wildlife crime, wildlife and forestry crimes, recognizing SADC as a source of products that are going out to the world. And you can see really where the problem is starting. It's starting in SADC. And I must say, I think somewhere around Gaza there as well, and related TFCAs, that's where we have the resources, and that's where most of the problems are coming from. You can move, Steve. I also wanted to draw your attention again in terms of the problems that we are having in TFCAs. This one is a study that was conducted by Washington University in the US, highlighting that 2006 to 2015, we actually had two main poaching hotspots, which were outside of SADC in Central and East Africa, and SADC region actually is emerging. You can see they indicated as a new hotspot. So it's a cause of concern in terms of security, in terms of the pathways of criminal activities, and obviously where are these products ending? We really need to see into how that is happening. I also thought of also showing, drawing closer to one TFCA, just showing the major routes that we are having in terms of trade, and these routes are actually coinciding as well with major criminal activities that are happening on the landscape. So the first one there is Angola timber to South Africa. The second one there is showing DRC and Zambia timber to Durban, Gaza to, well, and also how Botswana is a transit route in terms of in terms of our economic activities, and as well criminal activities that are happening on the landscape. You can move, Steve. So what are we perceiving? What do we want for TFCAs? Like I said, the issue of population, the issue of climate change is actually amplifying wildlife crime, human-wildlife conflicts and related illegal activities. And what we really want for our communities is their empowerment, recognizing that communities are active leaders in terms of conservation, and they really rely on agriculture, and as well, it means then that our agricultural prospects and the main ways of farming has to be improved that way. And also linking to the colleagues' presentations, how do we then ensure that these products are passing through designated and authorized pathways? You can move to the next, Steve. Conversion of wildlife habitats into cropland, I think, again, relating to increased populations, relating to climate change. There is a lot of movement towards conversion of wildlife lands into croplands. Again, in terms of opportunities, what do we need? Is actually for us to ensure and recognize that we have got we need to have different land uses. We need to have policies that relate to appropriate management and zoning of our landscapes in our areas on the ground. Steve, you can move to the next. I think this one I've also mentioned poaching, human wildlife crimes, illegal wildlife trade. This is commonplace in our areas. And how do we need to have this improved? Is to ensure that we need to ensure that we have got oh, sorry, you moved a bit fast, Steve. Yeah, so what we really need is to ensure that our corridors are secure, our habitats are safe, and we have more and growing populations of our wildlife resources. You can move, Steve, now. Yeah, in terms of the enabling conditions and how do we work together with the different sectors, as was alluded to my colleagues, that we need really to be working with colleagues, to be working with different sectors. I think the starting point is our program is consistent with the SADC Treaty, is also consistent with the SADC Regional Indicative Strategy, as mentioned by colleagues, really drawing from the need to conserve environment at a transboundary scale. We are also speaking to different head of state summits and communities, which we are drawing inspiration, which we are also drawing our mandates. I think the recent one was in Zimbabwe, where again we were encouraged, or we were yes, we were encouraged to ensure that the program of TFCAs progresses, and we also advised to engage across sectors and also with different international cooperating partners. We are aligned again with national and master integrated development plans. I think without integrated development plans, it is difficult really to see what is happening on the ground, and also to measure impacts on the ground. It will be difficult. We also are working through a TFCA program, which has different mandates, different activities, different thematic areas that we are working around, and we again trying to address those different elements of the program. We are also the program itself around TFCAs is also key in actually informing national, regional, and global frameworks and protocols, your CBDs, your CITES, and related international protocols, conventions. So we really want to ensure that we are speaking to all those elements. And again, I think the one big issue is readiness to attract funding from financial mechanisms. As it stands, I think most of our areas are not very ready to receive support or funding, largely due to the fact we are lacking coordinating structures. I think, again, my colleague from Secretariat here mentioned that need for coordination. So those are some of the things that we thought could be good and provide enabling conditions for our TFCA program to be effective and impactful. Steve, thank you.
Thank you very much, Colin. Some real food for thought there about how these economic development corridors could impact on our Transfrontier Conservation Area program. One of the things that strike me, and it's a bit of a dichotomy in a way, is that clearly you've shown that with increased access, there is the potential for increased criminality, increased illegal logging. But we also know that one of the things that's driving really people's involvement in poaching, people's involvement in illegal activities, is the levels of poverty. So, and we know without economic development, we're not really going to deal with the issues of poverty in the region. So it's a bit of like a chicken and egg scenario that one needs to manage. But I think, for example, in terms of tourism, access is always important. Not every area has potential for tourism. It might be pretty and it might be attractive, but if tourists can't get there because they can't drive there, for example, then they're not going to go and you're not going to get investment. So it really is a bit of a chicken and egg situation. So thank you for those comments. What I'd like to now do is check, Rawley, if there are any comments. I haven't managed to look at the chat. I don't know if you've got any comments that have come out in the chat, or if anybody would like to come in and ask a question to any members of the panel, or just make a comment, please just raise your hands and unmute yourself. And once I ask you to, and you can raise the question. I'm just going to open the chat now and see if there were comments. I see Paul Buscher has a question about, is there opportunity to use biodiversity offsets within TFCAs to mitigate the impact of large-scale development programs and projects? If so, have the impacts been quantified? So perhaps that's a question I could maybe, I don't know who I could direct it to, perhaps to Colin or to any of our infrastructure colleagues. The question of environmental impact assessments, the question of offsets where there is a negative impact on the environment. Is there a way in which one can build that into the program? I know biodiversity offsets have been seen as one of the sustainable financial mechanisms which could be used for conservation work. I don't know if Colin, do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah, Steve, I think the issue of biodiversity offsets is something which is really emerging, and I think there is quite a lot of opportunity around that, and I think it also serves for us in the room to just look into how that can be made feasible, given the development imperative of our corridors. So the extent now, I think maybe the question, from where to where are we going to be looking into it? Are we going to be looking at it at a TFCA specific level? Because the way I've seen the corridors, as mentioned by colleagues, they might be straddling more than 2, 3, 4, 5 countries. So yeah, I think it's just around a mechanism of how the biodiversity offsets can be planned around. But I think there is an opportunity for that. We need to explore more.
Great, thank you. Before I come to Catherine and Makelele, Chikondi, do you, I see your hands raised. Do you want to comment on this issue?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I think as you rightly mentioned, we need to move to work closely together moving forward. As it is right now, we are at the stage where we are still identifying the actual projects that we can do. So once we do that, that's when we can do a deeper analysis into what impacts can be explored. I know right now we may be looking at transport projects and infrastructure in general and the impacts of those. But going beyond the infrastructure, we'll also have to look at other projects. And that's where maybe we can look at how can we bring in positive impact and what kind of projects can bring in positive impacts to the initiatives of the economic corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chikondi. Maybe we can go to Catherine Mutambirwa. Catherine, please come in and just perhaps introduce yourself for the colleagues that don't know you. You could unmute yourself and put your camera on. That would be great.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay, you don't have to. It's all right. Don't worry.
Thanks. It's okay. Thanks, Steve. Very, very interesting presentation. So thanks to the presenters. So I'm with the UNCCD, the convention dealing with desertification. And in our COPs I think our COP in Abidjan, one of the decisions we have is to support the implementation of the Southern Africa Great Green Wall Initiative. So we've been trying to keep up with all the different initiatives that are happening in the region that might be relevant, and mainly because one of the key questions we're being asked by the financing partners is how we're making sure that we're not duplicating efforts with the Great Green Wall Initiative and ensuring that if there are other aligned initiatives, that it's coming in to add value or build on those. So this is why we were interested in this. And I think we've had presentations from the TFCA facility, from the river basins. So I would like to share with the at least SADC teams that are leading that we are now finalizing the technical assistance support for the Great Green Wall Initiative. And we hope that you will be involved in that, so we make sure that we're building on what you're already doing. I think this is really, really relevant, and that we are not duplicating efforts. And yeah, because as we know, the resourcing environment is becoming quite constrained, and there's this very strong focus on private sector investments, because I think that this region does have the enabling environment, unlike the other Great Green Wall, which is in the Sahel. So looking forward to further engagement, and we would like to continue the discussions with the teams leading this so that we capture this in the technical assistance we are providing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. I think, yeah, you're right. It is completely relevant. I mean, once you start restoring rangeland, for example, or reforesting areas that have been degraded, that's going to have impacts on so many things, from the water system to the possibility for agriculture, etc. So let's make sure we're talking to each other and not duplicating, as you said. So thank you. Thanks very much for joining us today. Makelele Kadihira, could you unmute yourself? Please introduce yourself and please make a comment or question. We can see you perfectly. Thank you. Makelele, are you talking? We can't hear you. Maybe if it's wasn't a problem, you can take off your video, but we can't hear you at the moment. Seem to have frozen. Maybe if you want, you can put your question into the chat or your comment. Sorry that we can't hear you right now. Let me just check the chat again and see if there are any other comments that came up. I see we've got a comment from Nunes Mazivil. He actually sent it to me on WhatsApp, because he couldn't for some reason check. Oh wait, I'm hearing. Is that
okay?
Sorry. Oh, there we go. Yes. Okay, please, Makelele, please, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I was just congratulating Mr. Colin and Steve Collins for your presentation. Thanks a lot. It was wonderful. My name is Makelele from Congo, DRC. I'm located in Goma, in the east of Congo. I'm representing Red Rocks Initiative for Sustainable Development. It's a NGO, a local NGO. We are exactly on the ground, and we are working a lot in Virunga National Park and Kauzi-Biega National Park. In Virunga National Park is in North Kivu, and Kauzi-Biega National Park is in South Kivu. We are just walking beyond on those two parks, and we are trying to do our best on the ground. What we are doing exactly, I was very, very happy to hear that SADC has a very, very wonderful program for economic development in the corridor, which is very, very interesting for us. What we are doing exactly, we are trying to develop local tourism and international tourism. We are also developing agriculture sector. In agriculture sector, we try to promote a lot coffee and cocoa. And for women's, we are promoting also species, because there is now a market which we have got from Europe, from America. There is some buyers who are interested with the species produced by the women, and also coffee and cocoa and tea also. We have already introduced tea, but we would like to have exactly the support of SADC, because we are really on the ground, and it's not easy to get in touch with SADC directly. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Makelele. Obviously, you're right. It's of interest here. It's all good to produce the goods, but if you can't put them into the market, you can't trade with them. If they rot before they get to the harbor because the roads aren't working, then you've got a problem. So we need to make sure that the kind of corridor development enables you and your farmers to produce goods, to sell the goods, and make a good living off that. So I think, though, the key issue is that many of these initiatives, ultimately, it's at a national level. SADC is a regional program. It can put in place policies and it can try and harmonize policies between countries. But the road that is developed, it's not a SADC road. It's a DRC road when it's in the DRC. When it goes into Zambia, then it becomes a Zambian road. So what's very important would be to ensure that your colleagues within the DRC government are working with SADC in the development of these corridors, those institutions, corridor institutions that were mentioned by Chikondi. We need to make sure that the DRC is participating in those, the ones in particular, the Lobito corridor, which was mentioned. So I think let's maybe you can certainly reach out to me. I can put you in touch with her. She might be able to give you the contacts within the DRC that they are working with to make sure that you do get the support that's needed. But thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. It is appreciated, and it is important. It's good to hear from people on the ground trying to improve people's lives with these kinds of initiatives. Thank you. So I want to go on to the next comment I see in the chat. It's from Desiree Menashakwe. She says, I'm interested to see how we can design the existing grant finance available, considering the global reduction in development finance, to de-risk private finance in TRC-linked interventions. From a private sector viewpoint, this is a key area that has to be discussed. So I think, Desiree, you're welcome to comment by yourself if you want in the group by unmuting yourself. But it seems to me one of the things that the finance facility, from a TFCA perspective, is trying to do is trying to work with the private sector by providing some grant finance to add, not to replace private sector investment, but to add to private sector investment, and through that trying to de-risk the kind of investment that's taking place. But de-risking also, for example, we talk about road access. Private sector can really not afford to finance road access, but if road access is important for the kind of investment they want to do, then once again, we need to make sure that these kinds of plans are transparent, that the private sector is aware of where, for example, roads are being developed. I'm thinking of, for example, at a Lubombo Transfrontier Conservation Area plan now within Mozambique, there is a tar road that runs from Ponta de Oro all the way through to the TFCA to Maputo. And that is enabling private sector tourism investment in that national park area, because now tourists have bigger access. So I think there are different ways to de-risk, but nothing is guaranteed, and that's probably the nature of private sector investment. But certainly we can make it a bit more certain. Graham, Paul, can we just mute ourselves? I'm seeing some people are unmute. Thank you. I don't know if that helps, or if any of my the colleagues, the presenters, want to comment on this issue of de-risking private sector investment through grant finance, or in some instances it might be some things like, I don't know, tax holidays, etc. I'm not sure if anybody would like to comment on that. As I see that, thank you, that Desiree, you responded in the comment. The comment from yes, Nunes. Good. I was about to read your comment. If you could maybe raise it. Thank you. Come in. Nice to have you back here again.
Thanks a lot for the invitation, Steve. Since I'm still an active member to the TFCA WhatsApp group, I thought this would be an opportunity for joining you. Thanks for the presentations. They were quite insightful. what I wanted to contribute a bit would be to look to the SADC economic development corridors as an asset with equal value as we look to TFCAs and river basins. There's a great opportunity that we might consider investing on, particularly on dialogue, but also putting money, because like Joao pointed out, there's a lot happening in the corridors that we don't possibly consider, but it's critical that we apply our mind and think beyond the box. Conditions are there, and the Secretariat has got a good role to play, particularly because there are good documents such as the LIPI strategy that has been approved recently. When we look at the corridors, at times, all these corridors, they coincide with borders. And in these borders, we have customs. It's a good entry point to start raising awareness of the importance of our officers in the border to strengthen all mechanisms to combat illegal wildlife trade, illegal wildlife smuggling. So this would be my contribution to say, let us start let us continue socializing the LIP strategy within SADC Secretariat, the same way how we socialize, and there are good activities that bring at least 2 or 3 directorates together. So that would be a best approach. But secondly, we need to move a bit outside, working with the governments and make sure that the government position themselves to protect their asset. Resources that are moving from our TFCAs straight to the corridors and away to either China or any other destinations. So this is something that is still missing a bit, that we may consider as we motivate dialogue on E-WEF. We also need to motivate this dialogue to show where we are losing our treasury, and we wake up while our ivory task is sometimes in Cambodia or is in China or in or even Vietnam, and we are left with empty hands. Let him pause here, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nunish. Great comments. I think Chikondi wanted to respond. It was either to your comment or to the previous comment. And Chikondi, I'd also ask you just when you do comment, just to give maybe some last reflections. And after you, I will ask Colm and Dumisani to also just give some reflections on some of the discussion that's happened. Chikondi, are you still there? Great.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Steve. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly elaborate a bit more. I know because it was a presentation, so it was difficult to bring in everything that has been done so far. Within the SADC Secretariat, we have formed a task team, and this task team is cutting across sectors. We have IDT, that is the suggestion team. We also have a FANR in agriculture and natural resources. We have the colleagues from water, from energy, from ICT, from customs, from skills development. It's quite a large team that is working together, and this is the team that we are calling like the North-South Corridor Task Team. So all the initiatives, even the ones that I was elaborating, that is the information that was shared, respective team members that we are working with. So we are really collaborating on that, and as we are working with member states, these are also going to be the key points of contact with the respective sectors that we bring together. We had a validation workshop in Johannesburg sometime back in July, and we also invited people from respective sectors because we wanted to have input from everyone. So I just wanted to emphasize that, the fact that we really need to collaborate like that going forward. On the overall overview, I just this is a very interesting conversation that we are having, and I would wish that we continue this kind of collaboration. We are going to extend this task team beyond the SADC Secretariat, and we are going to involve other stakeholders from ICPs, from financiers, and any other interested parties that may wish to join us. We are planning to start our team meetings from January. So all those that are interested to join, perhaps they can contact Steve and indicate their interest so that we can start, we will be moving together as we start the detailed collaboration. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chondi. That's great news about the task team. It sounds like a very practical way to make sure that all the different sectors understand what's happening and then can play a role. Thank you. Could I ask Colm if you've got some last reflections you'd like to make?
Yeah, sure, Steve. Okay, am I putting my video on? Okay, sure, Steve.
Yes, it's on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Steve, there is a lot of work done. There is a lot of work to be done, but unfortunately, the global financing of conservation and any other activities, I think it's shrinking globally. So I think we really need to think differently going ahead in terms of how do we finance our activities. And I think one of which is what we have started today, engaging with different sectors, coming together with common minds. And I think from there, we can find innovative ways of working around maybe where we don't need funds, how we can work around that. Where we need funds, I think this approach where we are now engaging with different sectors, I think it works better and it can improve our approaches on the ground. But just to acknowledge that global financing of our activities is shrinking, and we really need to have innovative finance mechanisms for our programs and activities.
Just thank you. Thank you very much. I think, Colm, it raises for me immediately this issue of without economic development, you don't have taxes. Without taxes, you have no government's support, and you can't put resources into the kind of work that needs to happen. So we do need economic development, and we also need to find ways in which we're able to use that to find ways for sustainable financing in the long term. Dumisani, I don't know if you, from a water perspective, if you have any last reflections you'd like to make.
Thanks. And just to say, it was also an opportunity for us to appreciate a bit more on the different dimensions, especially from the TFCA sector, which is a sector we also wish to work with. And insights from Chikonde's presentation, especially on the issue of regional value chains. We have had them dealt with like in an open region, but when you now use the corridor approach, it creates it makes it a bit easier to come in. It's an aligning concept in a way, so to speak. And it allows us to start somewhere because resources are always deficient. So if you can channel something where it can make impact, it's not just only you, but all other, several other sectors are working in the same space. So it assists a lot. For instance, we have seen a good partnership in the Kazungola bridge and one-stop border. We suddenly realized, there's now going to be deficiency in water, in sanitation services. We were able to then put up a water scheme that assists. So it's an example of such. And I liked also the contribution from Catherine in relation to the Great Green Wall Initiative. It's also touching on several aspects of areas of collaboration. And if we tie that together with the corridor development, for instance, our river basin organizations are now working strongly on the issues of NPS, like the Zambezi, and the issues of human-wildlife conflict, which for the TFCA is linked directly in as far as now taking away the people from the conflict zone through providing water services closer to them and livelihoods initiatives closer to them, so that they don't have to go and compete with the wildlife and then mitigate that conflict. I think there's a lot of space for partnership, and we are doing some work, starting some work with the World Bank. We'll seek also partnership with you, Steve, and our colleagues in the TFCA and FNR. Doing some wetland studies. We're picking a few just to understand them better, because ultimately we want to really work on the nature-based solution mainstreaming within our river basin organization. And we're looking to starting to design joint investment or programs with the TFCAs, between the RPOs and the TFCAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dumisani. Thank you to all the presenters. I just want to take 1 minute to summarize, if it's possible. And I think for me, the key summary point is that these economic development corridors could be both positive or negative in terms of the Trans-Frontier Conservation Area Program. But ultimately, for me, I see them as being positive if we are able to use the enabling framework that then comes with economic development. If we're able to use the access, if we're able to use the job creation potential, if we're able to use the access to markets, we can help improve people's lives within Trans-Frontier Conservation Areas. And as Dumisani just pointed out, we can find ways in which they are able to live with wildlife in a better, more existence rather than conflict way. I am happy to say that the river basin organizations, the TFCAs, are continuing to deepen their collaboration. And I think if we can now extend it to the economic development, the transport sector, the ICT sector, we can find, maybe it's the task team that was mentioned, we can find ways to do that. From our perspective as the TFCA network, we're going to start including information about these economic development corridors on our TFCA portal to make sure that conservation practitioners and the people that are currently part of our network are able to see where these corridors are able to find contacts should they want to talk about them. But thank you very much. I think the ecosystems, water, energy, food nexus is a good way for us to think about it. There are so many dependencies between all these different sectors. And unless we know what's happening, we are going to find ourselves in conflict rather than cooperation. So lastly, from my perspective, I want to thank the organizers that were part of the organizing team, people like Rawley and others that were helping to set up the ICT sector from SADC. This is our last webinar for the year. We will post this on our YouTube site with the other webinars, and I'll put notice out once that is done. And to those of you who are not going to the CITES COP, I've still got a lot of work ahead of us. But really, we've had a very busy year, all of us. It seems the work, there's always more work to do. So I hope you find the opportunity to rest and be with your families over the Christmas period. And then we come back next year ready to engage with our colleagues from other sectors, ready to find out what they're doing and find out what the TFCAs, which are hopefully looking after these ecosystems that are so important from a water and energy and a food perspective, that we are able to play our part and work with them. And with that, I will say to you all, goodbye, have a great day further, and we look forward to engaging with you further next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.